Good morning. It's just coming on 9:01, so I am Michael Brainard and our team is Jessica and Elijah, as you can see on the screen. And before I get into the title and what we're doing and why we're doing it, I'll ask Jessica to kick us off with a couple of ground rules and do's and don'ts. Jessica, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to be managing the chat, and we encourage you to participate. I'm also going to be managing the Q&A after the webinar. This webinar is being recorded. Please let us know if you would like to receive a copy of the recording. And I think that's all I have. So I'll give it back to you, Michael.
Thank you, Jessica. Elijah, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, I'm doing well.
Elijah's on our team, as is Morgan and Claudia, and Elijah specifically has been working with me for 2 years as of yesterday. Is that right, Elijah?
That is right.
And Elijah, that's wonderful. Congratulations, and we're delighted to have you. Elijah's specific job is to help manage all of our coaching engagements and our coaching practice as well. For the last year plus, he's been working with me on all things Bias Trifecta, which has become a unique value proposition that we offer our clients through all of our leadership development services. We bring bias and thinking around bias. So Elijah, thanks for your ongoing effort. And I thought you could chime in at a couple spots here and be helpful today. So good morning and welcome.
Welcome to do it.
For those of you who don't know, we are Brainard Strategy. We've been here in Southern California since 2006. We provide leadership development, strategic planning, change management, and all things team alignment. We're classic org behavior people, and we consult with mid-size and large companies. My own background is that of an industrial psychologist. And one of the things we decided to do when this pandemic took hold back in early March was, as a team, we got together and thought, what if we could take our assets, our thinking, some of our innovation, and bring it to the marketplace free of charge on these Friday webinars. So we have things like social isolation. We have thinking around setting up and managing a virtual workforce, how to lead and converse with people in times of great difficulty. So we've taken some of these topics and packaged them such that we could be helpful to folks like you in our ecosystem by bringing insights and specific actions you could put in place to be more effective both societally and in your organization. That's what we're endeavoring to do. So today is the 11th of such series in our webinar, Friday webinar series. And we were firmly entrenched in the pandemic when 2 weeks ago, 12 days ago, our world changed yet again in a negative way with yet another murder of an African-American by a police force. And we got to talking as a team, and we thought, well, what can we bring? This is obviously on top of many people's minds. We see that when people are entering the workforce, issues of diversity and inclusion have always been important. But given the specific environment today, what do we have? Well, we have a specific set of expertise around studying bias. For those of you who don't know, I was fortunate enough to do a TEDx talk several years ago on something we discovered called the Bias Trifecta. In thinking about what's going on in our society, I thought, well, we could bring insights and leadership actions around how does bias specifically work from a scientific standpoint, and more specifically, how does bias contribute to systemic oppression of Black, brown, gay, any minority group that has experienced oppression. Some root of that is in our brain, in our collective consciousness. And we're going to explore today how bias then contributes to oppression with the specific examples and specific thinking around policing and violence toward Black people. And it's not just a police issue. This is a systemic issue in our society. I got a couple of emails from dear friends that said, boy, this is a political hot button. I don't view this as a political issue at all. Of course, there's someone in office today who is different than someone in office 4 years ago, and the Congress and Senate will change. But to be clear, this is a societal issue. This is less of a political issue, although politics play a part. You could easily say the education system plays a part, the healthcare system plays a part, the tax code plays a part. The point is, politics are critical because that is the agent of change or the operating mechanism for change. But this is a societal issue that's been around a long time before this administration and likely will be around after this administration. There are some things this administration has been doing to move the bias, and we'll share that in a moment. But we got together as a team and thought, what can we contribute? We can contribute how bias contributes to systemic oppression, and we can educate and bring insights that can be helpful for us as an ecosystem, all of us, societally and in our organizations. I'm reminded of something that my high school wrestling coach taught me, which is never be in the coulda, shoulda, woulda club. And as a white man, to sit neutral or to speak politely or quietly because of the fear of offending somebody and therefore not doing business with somebody is something that I've been guilty of. And this idea of never being the coulda, shoulda, woulda club, it hit me in the head last week. And I thought my neutrality or my lack of voice around something that I can contribute to is a problem. And so we as a team got together and decided, let's contribute. I don't know what side of the issue people on this webinar are on, but I can tell you from our perspective that neutrality is no longer an issue. As a firm and as a human being, I'm going to try to contribute to the solution in any way that I can. And that's the point of this webinar, is to share some of the science and the fact-based thinking around bias and oppression. And when I say we are the change, it really is inappropriate to say all of us are the change. White people are in power. White people have to drive the solution. To wait for Black and brown people to contribute or drive the solution is a ridiculous approach. They're not in the majority. They don't have power in our society to the extent that white people do. So as a white male, I'm going to put some thinking forward. You can disagree or agree. That's not the point. The point is to drive insights, to drive new discussions, and to drive a safe place to disagree and to talk about fact-based and reality, where the media and politicians and all sorts of people have different agendas. We're going to come at this as fact-based as we possibly can. I mentioned the bias trifecta. Most of us on this call or this webinar will understand unconscious bias pretty readily, where out of awareness, our brain processes lots and lots of stimulus. We also know that unconscious bias, it's a negatively charged word, but it's not a negative word at all. It's a science-based word that says a proclivity to lean toward or pull away from a stimulus. So out of our awareness, we're processing lots and lots of stuff, and we're much more comfortable and familiar with things that are like us or things we're familiar with. We're much less comfortable with things that are less familiar or less comfortable to us. Everybody kind of gets that. What we found was that there's lots of cognitive biases, many of them, but these three work in conjunction to allow us as humans to form very quick impressions and judgments and make very fast decisions. It's a survival mechanism. So where bias sometimes can be viewed as a negative, it's not at all negative. It's a part of the human condition. All of us, Black, white, brown, gay, straight, Chinese, American, have biases. These are physiologically rooted in our brain. The unconscious bias mechanism has been found to sit in the amygdala where fight or flight is. Very fast reactions, automatic process. We don't have to think about it. It's a survival play. Retroactive inference is when we begin the process of stimulus, we go backwards into our experience set and we make sense of new stimulus by comparing it to our memories and our experiences. It's a flawed process because we don't compare it to all of our memories and experiences, but we do take a select few. The problem with retroactive inference is when I'm interpreting anything new, I use a backward or old set of tapes to do that, and they're my own experiences. So it's very limited. And then when I form an impression or a point of view, as a human, not as a person in the majority class, I go and look for confirming information. I go look for information that I'm okay, I'm right, my point of view is safe. and I'll actively negate information that works against my original point of view. The best way to think about that is a first impression. It's very hard to change a first impression because the first step in changing a first impression is to tell yourself that you were wrong. That's not safe for most of us. These three biases work very quickly. They're rooted in our anatomy, not our psychology, our biology, and they operate to give us the world in a systemically distorted way, but it's a fast and efficient play. It's not slow or inefficient, it's fast and efficient, even if it's not always accurate. Biases are well known. We just put this trifecta together to help leaders understand mistakes in decision making. Elijah, if I could, you've studied this topic with me and worked with me in this. What I missed, any observations specifically maybe around confirmation bias that I missed or you would want to share?
Yeah, I think you covered it well. What I would like to add to confirmation bias is I believe that ultimately that's really the fuel behind the systemic oppression and the injustices that we are witnessing. So the reason that is, right, is just like Michael said, it is a bias that when challenged, we have to then tell ourselves that we were wrong. And that's not easy for any of us to do because we have egos, right? So that is a very challenging thing to do. However, once we can get to the fact of understanding that we have confirmation bias, that we continue to seek information that makes us feel good about ourselves, then we can begin to challenge some of the narrative and the rhetoric that occurs in society, in media, to at least have us pause, right? It's getting to the pause, it's getting to the opportunity to slow down, to say, is there another viewpoint that I could consider? And once we get there, I believe that's where we can start to have conversations. So that's what I want to contribute.
That's right. We're all a product of our upbringing, right? And so this idea of bias exists in both our nature and our nurture, to use that old phrase, right? It's a part of our brain, which is the organic, natural part of our body. And then the nurture part is, as I form as a child and grow up, I have a set of experiences. And as Elijah mentioned, I then want to go out and feel good about myself. I don't want to tear myself down or tell myself I'm wrong or inadequate. So fast bits of information that confirm my worldview are likely how most humans, it's not a bad thing. I mean, it can be bad, but it just is. That's how we process information, whether you're Elijah or Michael. You have to work hard to break away from this sort of self-soothing comfort, speed, and efficiency play. And really the anecdote is work slow, to work inefficiently, and to be challenged, right? And that's how leaders, disciplined thinkers, develop worldview that is much more responsible. So as we think about these biases, maybe a second insight that could be useful if you're not familiar with the bias trifecta is that the way that these biases impact us individually is pretty well understood. Elijah and I do a lot of management and leadership training where we help leaders understand their biases. Okay, I think that's great. And we can chip away individually one at a time. But the insight that we've had during this particular crisis is that there is a collective set of agreements, largely implicit collective agreements, some explicit. But out of our awareness, we as a society have decided and agreed upon certain things out of our awareness. I'll give you a couple of examples. We all agree, and this 2x2 is kind of powerful. We all agree that women will make less money for the same job than men. Now, as I say that, many of you are uncomfortable saying, no, we don't. Yes, we do. You may not individually, either implicitly or explicitly, believe that women should be paid less for the same job, but facts are facts. Women, in fact, make less money for the same jobs across industries in this country. That's a fact. We believe as a society that women are less effective leaders than men. We believe that Black men are less effective leaders than white men. Now, when I say that, you're uncomfortable. You're thinking, no, that's not true. We don't believe that. Yes, we do. Facts are facts. Women outstrip men in the United States labor force. Full stop. They are the majority in the workforce. Full stop. BLS.gov if you want to look it up. Forget the media. Go right to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Women are the majority in the workforce. Yet, when we go to manager, when we go to director, when we go to vice president, and when we go to the C-suite, The representation of women in those leadership positions drops precipitously. We all know this. What percentage of the Fortune 500 CEOs are women? What percentage of the Fortune 500 CEOs are Black? We believe as a society that white men are the archetypes of leaders. We also have agreed that Black men are dangerous. Black men represent a threat. We have agreed. Now, that may make us feel uncomfortable. Individually, my explicit beliefs, I don't say that. But when we look at our collective agreements in society, Black men scare us. And they're more violent. And if you want confirmation bias, go look at the prison population. See, they must be more violent. They show up in prison a whole lot more than white people. So we can choose our data to keep these collective agreements going. And what happens in policing is just one example in society where we have decided the archetype of a police officer, and we have decided an archetype for Black people. We don't want to talk about it, but it's an implicit truth. The facts are the facts, and they're hard to deny. Between 2013 and 2019, the police killed roughly 7,666 people, depending who you read. Here's what's interesting about this slide that I'd like to communicate. The FBI, nor the Department of Justice, collect statistics on police killings. I'm going to say it again. To get data, so when you're listening to me right now, if you're uncomfortable, you could go find data that is different than this data. And you could argue with me. I mean, not really. The 2.5 times or 3 times is very well established. But the point is, there is no national central database on the frequency and the rate of how many times people are killed by the police. Believe it or not, in 2020, it is voluntary for any police force to report its murders to any database at all. So there's institutions that collect this data, but think about that for a moment. The FBI nor the DOJ collects data on local state police killings. They collect data on their own, but not local and state. It's an odd sort of systemic indicator that we might not want to know certain things. To Elijah's point, we like what we know, but we might be uncomfortable if we really knew stuff. So to me, the slide is self-explanatory. Police are killing people, which obviously some part of that is part of their job. It's a dangerous job, but they're killing Black people at about 2.5 times the rate of white people. And at some point, when you're at 2.5 times the rate in the year 2013 through 2019, we can't say we've made a ton of progress. And oh, by the way, if you're thinking this is political and this is about Trump, part of it is, of course. But this stuff didn't slow down much during the Obama years. This is a systemic societal issue. Now, what Donald Trump has done is made some of this implicit bias explicit, and he's made it safe for people in our society to speak a certain way, and he speaks a certain way. And that is true, that we can excite and incite fringes of belief and society. When my daughter's 15 and says to me, the president said he can grab women's private parts because he's famous. Is that true, Daddy? That's what my daughter said to me. She asked me the question, is it okay when someone's famous to grab a girl any way they want? So words matter, leadership matters, and part of the solution here is understanding a fact-based discussion that's safe. We talked about 2013 to 2019. In 2015, we had a spike. 2015, unarmed Black people were killed at 5 times the rate of white people. Just ask ourselves the basic question, why weren't white people killed at the same rate or double the rate of Black people? Why? Why didn't that happen? There must be something driving extra violence toward Black men. And we have to challenge ourselves as leaders in society to think about that, to solve this problem. How do we think about that? I think the way we think about it is 3 ways: nature, nurture, and culture, right? So we know biases contribute to the collective agreements that we all make societally. Women shouldn't make same money for the same job. We know that these statistics and data exist. I'm not making this up. This is not sort of MSNBC or Fox. These are just facts. Facts are cold. Facts are hard and they're stubborn. What's not cold, hard, and stubborn is when you start putting names to this. We're talking about thousands of Black men. We're talking about misrepresentation in the prison system. We're talking about violence against a part of our society that has names, that have families, that have experiences. Many of us on this webinar will have an African-American or a homosexual friend or family member. And we have stories that are first or second hand of the treatment that those people get out in our society, whether it's at the DMV in the line, whether it's at the grocery store, how Elijah might be looked at differently by a person following them in the store versus me. These things are systemic. It's not just about police, but when it comes down to the violence of police against Black people, we can't put our heads in the sand anymore. This is a problem of violence in our society, perpetrated by white people in positions of power, and the system reinforces itself. The insight is that we are often thinking in a very unique and odd way as Americans in our culture. We are unique. This problem doesn't exist in other parts of the world. Of course, there's oppression all over the world, but the police manifestation of oppression is unique to us among our peers. Who are our peers? Western wealthy nations. We won't even talk about Japan or other countries, but there is oppression and bias all over the planet. It's a part of the human condition. Interesting. But what I'm saying that I think is controversial that we have to wake up about is that we kill our citizens at a much higher rate. We kill about 3 people a day from a policing standpoint. In the UK, they killed 55 people in 15 years. We as leaders in an American society have to get away from neutrality. This is the time for inaction, the time for, yeah, but those times are over. We are biased. In our particular culture, we're biased against women in the workplace and Black people in the workplace. More specifically, what we're talking about today is we have a belief that Black men are dangerous and the police must be different, treating them differently than other people. And that belief has to be challenged. And it's a systemic set of processes that reinforce that belief. How do we hire? Who do we hire for in the police force? How do we hire? How do we train? How do we then prosecute people who do commit violence or crimes against Black people? I was watching the TV coverage the other day. Benjamin Crump, the attorney for the Floyd family, said, yes, the announcer on the TV said, well, we have 9 minutes of video. I mean, this should be a slam dunk, right? Benjamin Crump shook his head. He said, oh no, this is going to be a very difficult case to prosecute. A very difficult case to prosecute. Most of us have seen that video. Listen to Benjamin Crump. A very difficult case to prosecute. This chart, I hope, shakes us up a little bit more about systemic oppression. Since 2013 through 2019, 99% of crimes committed by police officers have not led to a conviction. Not even led to charges. Everyone on this webinar probably knows this intuitively. It is very difficult for the criminal system to charge and convict one of its own. Think about the bias there. Well, they're stressed. Well, they work a lot. Well, they have dangerous jobs. They absolutely have dangerous jobs. We lose about 45 to 50 police officers every year due to violence perpetrated against them. Police officers and firefighters put themselves in the line of danger all the time. They're killed by accidents much more than they're killed by aggression. But think about the numbers just for a moment. Across this country, we lose about 40 to 50 police officers a year. Across this country, we lose about 1,000 citizens per year. We can't be measuring this stuff as life doesn't matter. Life matters. But when a police officer commits a crime, in almost every case, they're not charged or convicted. There's no explanation for that other than systemic oppression and the protection of the people who commit crimes if they wear a certain uniform. There's just no other way to describe how that could happen. If you look at it from any angle, look at the US prison population. It's fascinating to look at. 1 in 3 Black men, if you're born in 2001, will spend time in prison. 1 in 17 white men. We are the majority in this country. 13% of the population is Black. 1 in 3 Black men will spend time in prison. We can't get a police officer charged or put into prison. I mean, we can't get it, but you're gonna get it in 1/3 of the cases if you're a Black man. These are not political issues, these are societal issues. Here's a statistic I'd like to really drive home with all of us. About 69% of the total people arrested in 2013 were white. Just, you can read the stats on the right. We've already talked about some of the stats on the right, where for every million people, 31 out of a million will be murdered if you're Black. Out of a million, about 1.5 white people will be murdered. That's about 30 times the rate that you'll be murdered. So we can read these statistics all day long. They're pretty normal, but I'd like us to pay particular attention to this. In 2013, 69% of all arrests were white people. Now look at this statistic. White people are represented in the prison system, state and federal. This is only state and federal, by the way, according to Pew Research. Black people are the majority of prisoners. 69% of the arrests were white people. Only 28% were Black people. But when we get to the system of oppression, the criminal justice system, look what happens. When you get into the system as a white person, you likely can get out of the system. When you get into the system as a young Black man, you cannot get out of the system. It is very difficult for a Black man to get out of the system. When Kelly or my teenage son or daughter might get arrested, the police bring the kid to the front door and say, hey, take care of this kid. What's wrong with this kid? Elijah, if you were 17 and got arrested, I doubt if they would have brought you to your parents' house and said, hey, take care of this guy. Get him upstairs to bed, get him a shower. He's a nice kid, get him out of here. I don't think so. I think you'd be spending a night in jail, my friend. Look at this statistic. Black people are 13% of the US population, but they're the majority in the prison population. Black people get arrested less frequently than white people, but they're the majority in the prison system. How do you explain this? Bias is the starting point, but these are collective agreements. The criminal justice system is set up to work against the poor and to work against Black people. Full stop. There's no other way to explain these numbers, these facts. These facts are stubborn things. So when we look at the problem, we think about how does this problem exist and what the heck can we do about it? There's something called the lenses of systemic oppression. You can look this up on your own. But I like it because it goes from the individual set of beliefs that we all have, right? There are beliefs that we all express. Maybe we hold them implicitly, maybe we express them explicitly. These beliefs, to Elijah's earlier point, have to be challenged, have to be changed. I believed that by picking the middle, I could do business with more people. I believed that my neutrality was politically and societally good and safe, and why upset the apple cart? Well, if I can challenge my belief, it doesn't mean I become a rebel, but where's my unique gift and talent and our firm's unique assets and talents around bias? It's around helping leaders understand how these things affect their brain so they can think from what Jim Collins calls in Good to Great with great leaders, discipline of thinking. Well, shouldn't we all as adults in society have disciplined thinking? Shouldn't we all look to not confirm what we believe, but to challenge and educate ourselves, to be learning agile? I have HR colleagues that can be on any part of the political spectrum, but we talk about learning agility as a great skill for leaders. Interpersonally, you'll hear the media talk about, Chris Cuomo is somebody on Fox might say, all you got to do is sit down and go talk to a Black person and get to know them. That's not all you got to do, but it's a part of understanding each other's experience, right? Claudia on our team is a Brazilian immigrant. She has a different set of experiences as a woman in that position than I could ever have. Elijah, Jessica. Jessica was born and raised in Mexico, and I was born and raised in the East Coast. We have to get to know each other to understand each other's journey and path and grow. But people who close that bubble and don't want to have their worldview rocked might be more protective. The lenses of systemic oppression. So when I'm not open, this systemic oppression exists because you can never challenge the structural issues or institutional issues until you start talking with facts and data without emotion to say institutionally, the police kill Black people at 2.5 times the rate of white people. Full stop. Institutionally, when the police hurt or kill somebody, they largely do not get convicted. Okay, you can say you disagree with that, but you'd be wrong. These are facts. Institutionally, then the next set of questions says, what can we do to challenge our structures and our institutions? Why is it that yesterday in LA County, there were layoffs of teachers? Guess where those layoffs occurred? Not in Beverly Hills. Those layoffs were centered in South LA. For those of you who don't know, South LA is a little more diverse than other parts of LA, I'll just say that. These are systemic and structural issues that until we get fact-based and have clarity of thinking around, they're going to be impossible to change. How do we recruit and train police officers? How do we hold police officers accountable when they violate the rules? Imagine a director at your company who acted completely inappropriately with another employee. What are we to do? Protect the director or enforce policies or challenge our policies? Think about the whole movement around how sexual interactions are handled in the workplace or ethics is handled in the workplace. Elijah, I don't want to call you out inappropriately, but as an African-American man, you've probably experienced some individual or the impact of person's beliefs. You might have experienced or react on the news, frankly, to some of these structural challenges. Anything you want to say here about what you're observing today in the media or what's going on around George Floyd?
Yeah, you know, I don't think I would be an isolated case. And unfortunately, there's people who experience even worse things that I know I could ever have experienced in regards to oppression and overt racism. I would say this, that the biggest step that anyone could do, regardless of the race, is moving from apathy to empathy. That's the first and biggest step that I believe that anyone can take, is the simple fact of it's that simple. Just for seconds understanding that I have to lay my beliefs aside for this moment to really understand. But the biggest thing next, right after that, and speaking a lot more to the white population, is obtaining education. So the reason why you can even become more empathetic is to understand and educate yourself on what hasn't been said and what hasn't been displayed. There's a reason why, obviously, that this seems so shocking to so many white people, because the history books, because history itself has not painted a picture of saying, hey, this is what you know, this is what we as a society have done to these minority groups. So you have to then seek it, right? And so that is a huge aspect. In fact, the most impactful aspect right after empathy is the simple fact of saying, wow, I see where you have started in your race. And I understand that my race started 100 meters ahead of you. I get that now. Okay, I'm educated, right? And that is where the battle is. Oftentimes what happens is, once you have the bias, once you have this belief that I am okay, Black people are okay, we're the same, we're fine, you no longer continue to seek out information to say that you're wrong. And then you begin to discover more and more education on how opposite the thought is. And in fact, we've never had the same outlook, and still to this day, never. Right? It's easy to band-aid situations to say, well, look, there's a Black president. Wow, see, look, there's no more racism. That's not how it works, right? Just like we've been talking about this whole time, it's a systemic issue. Just because you see one doesn't mean that all are obtaining the same treatment. I don't get to look at someone who is white and say, I know all white people think and look and act the same. I know they're not. I can see that as obvious to me. I grew up in Iowa. I grew up in a predominantly white school districts. Going to a predominantly white school, I know that white people aren't all the same. However, unfortunately, it feels like a lot of times that when it's drawn back on the other foot, one Black person represents all. And that cannot be our education. That cannot be how we move forward. So challenging that is never possible. And because we may stumble on the fact that we may not be as smarter, as educated as we thought. However, it's not a bad thing to be ignorant to information. Where it's bad is being willfully choosing to be ignorant to what you could know. That's the destructive side of this whole thing.
I like it. That's really well said. I like the idea of moving from apathy to empathy. To be clear, bias is a part of the human condition. Let's just look back. We have cognitive biases. They allow us to go very fast and work efficiently. The challenge is that collectively, we in our society have certain agreements about certain people. And white people, particularly white men, have been in charge. And so our agreements about Black people, about policing, and about prosecutions have won the day. Full stop. When the Constitution was written in our country, slavery was legal, and written in the Constitution were that Black people were 3/5 of a person. That's our original sin. So nature is our brain, nurture is our education system, and our society being dominated by people in power who look like me, and culture. Culture. Our Constitution was written with 3/5 of a human assigned to a Black person. You could buy and sell Black people when our Constitution was written. We had laws in our country that separated Black people from white people. In the 1950s, Brown versus Education was fought in the Supreme Court to give the right for Black and white people to go to school together in the 1950s. In 1970, in the Southeast Conference in football, Black people were not allowed to play football. I'll say it again. In the SEC, you couldn't go to college and play football in the SEC if you were Black until 1970. We have systemic oppression of Black people, full stop. That systemic oppression, the system, education, healthcare, policing, has been brought about by the human condition. Our collective agreements are biases. We cannot expect a minority who's being oppressed to change the system. The awakening is we have to change the system. We, white people, moving from apathy or neutrality to empathy. I love Dante's quote, the hottest places in hell are for the neutral. Teddy Roosevelt talked about the man in the ring. You can always sit outside the ring and throw barbs at CNN or Fox. Who cares? Let's get involved. Many people in this webinar lead in an organization, have a voice, have an education. What can we do to propel our society forward? Or are we comfortable with where we are? Apathy to empathy. Here are some key principles in terms of a solution. We all have this sort of proximal zone of development. We all have a sphere of control. Michael Brainard, I don't control certain systems in society. I don't. People that we've elected do. But what can I do? Where's my praxis? Where can I learn from my failures and my neutrality? Where can I offer something to somebody with my position that I might not have been able to offer before? Where can I understand something about somebody's experience and connect people? These are the things I can do. I can also vote. I can also contribute, or I can choose not to. But we all can do something within our zone. Think about it as white people. If we could all do something in our proximal zone of control or influence, if we could all do something to support change of this systemic oppression that leads to violence. The United States president, not this one, used the word sons of bitches when he talks about Black people kneeling to protest police brutality 3 years ago. I'm sorry, 2 years ago, I apologize. 2 years ago. Well, they're disrespecting the flag. Yet, my grandpa was a Marine who fought in World War II and got wounded. I have great friends in the Navy SEAL organization. The military fights for our freedom, freedom of expression, freedom to protest, freedom to gather, freedom to vote. So a peaceful protest on a football field by largely Black athletes was met from our current president as calling them sons of bitches and telling them not to kneel. So now we don't have peaceful protests by elite athletes on television because we've tamped that down. We've said no. We've created a greater boiler pot. More anger, more angst. We have leaders who willfully turn the other way on gun violence, willfully turn the other way on healthcare for poor children, willfully turn away from challenging the status quo around the criminal justice system. We have language that my daughter hears, a 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl, that's unacceptable. How do we offset these leadership pitfalls and fill in this area by challenging our confirmation bias and challenging our comfort zone? We all need to go into our organizations, go into our society, go into our family, and lead with more questions. Reach out to people that are different than us and try to understand how we can be a part of a solution for our local communities and our local companies. Bias is the root of systemic oppression. Systemic oppression can't be changed by me and my language. It has to be changed by our behaviors, our voting, and our inclusivity as we move forward. Our insight was to bring a biological basis to how this oppression occurs, make sure that we can all be on one side of a political continuum or not. Who cares about politics? We got a societal problem. And I don't think if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you can be very comfortable with the rate of violence against a big part of our society. That's what got us interested in bringing this to you today. I know it's a little controversial. I think that's a part of our brand as a firm, is to kind of push and get on the edge and help people learn and develop. Thank you for listening. Jessica, perhaps we can do some Q&A. And I'm happy to get any email or any follow-up questions or any ways we can be helpful after this call. So Jessica.
Yes, thank you. We have actually a compliment saying that it was very well said and this is not a political issue. So he applauds Brainard's strategy's efforts for addressing this.
Why,
and we have a question: as a white male, how can I express support and empathy to my Black colleagues without insulting them or sounding condescending? Elijah, you want to try that one?
That's right.
Yeah, actually, I think we should both answer that. I think it's pretty simple. As long as you speak from a place of, I hear you and I want to understand, I don't think it can ever be condescending. What considers condescending is when, if you were to say, hey, I get it, I know what you're going through, and you can fix it. That's not a way to empathize. Empathy literally doesn't have to do with knowing what they're going through. It's feeling what they're going through, right? You have to understand and draw to your place of, wow, I remember when I felt shame. I remember when I felt angry. I remember when I felt sad and not heard. That's how you empathize. And so if you go to someone who is a person of color, who is a Black person, and saying, hey, I hear what's all going on, I'm here and I'm also educating myself to learn more. That is how you don't affect.
I'll try it from a white guy perspective. Elijah, how's that?
Sure, that'd be great.
Qualifying from a leadership development standpoint, a way to offset potential conflict is to qualify. Qualifying means I predict the emotion and put the emotion out in front of the statement. So it might look like this. Hey, Elijah, I absolutely don't intend to offend you, but I do have a question. I'd like to understand this. Elijah, this question, I don't even know how to word it right. It might come out offensive. I do not intend to offend you, but here's my question or my observation. Qualifying your own potential negative reaction or the other person's potential negative reaction and putting it right out in front and stating your intention. That could be a very healthy way to keep yourself clean and keep the defensiveness mitigated while we have an interaction. Just a quick addition there. Maybe it'd be helpful. Jessica.
Well, we don't have any more questions at the moment. And we will be, well, we have one question about the recording. We will be sharing the recording. So thank you for asking, and just send us an email and we'll make sure to get that to you. All right, we have one other question for Elijah specifically. Elijah, can you talk a little about the place of emotional intelligence in all of this?
Yeah, I love emotional intelligence. Okay, so emotional intelligence starts with the biggest pillar is self-awareness, right? That is where you start when it comes to understanding what's going on, is where can I check myself? What do I currently believe? What do I currently hold dear? What do I currently not understand? And become aware of what that is. Once you can do that, you can then use your emotional intelligence to further the conversation. You seek out more information. You begin to check your own emotions if you begin to get tense or defensive. If someone were to be angry at you, especially say you're a white person, and you were to say something and someone would respond and they seem crass or angry about your response. Emotional intelligence helps you to not respond back in anger, knowing that they come from a place of hurt or frustration. It allows you to say, wow, they are experiencing so much pain. I can only imagine what they're going through. Let me check myself, maybe ask a different way, or maybe give them the space that they need. That's how you use emotional intelligence. It's all about checking how your emotions fall in right now and saying, how do I want to show up? How is this going to benefit and further the conversation? Because it's not about making myself feel good about being a good person right now. It's saying there are human and civil rights issues that need to be resolved. And if this individual and I can have this understanding and we can be on the same page, that's how I know we can go forward. But if they're not, that doesn't mean the conversation doesn't go forward. It means, oh, okay, I understand, cool. Let me keep searching, let me keep educating.
And what you're really talking about when you're talking about emotional intelligence is right here in the center, those interpersonal interactions driven by self-awareness, as you articulately said, and empathy, right? That's where we can impact this sort of systemic oppression. And when we create large swaths of dialogue between, let's just use macro, the Black community and the police, we've got to get that going. And that'll be part of a way to challenge systemic oppression. It's not the only way, but it's the way. So whoever asked that question, very astute question, that's where we're attacking systemic oppression at the interpersonal level en masse. That could be a huge part of the solution. So Elijah, well said. I just wanted to point to where that is, because we can wait for laws to be passed at the institutional level, but we can all begin to shift this dynamic at the interpersonal level using emotional intelligence. If we create large swaths of police and Black people communicating differently, we can change it right there. And that's meaningful. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and just to add on to that really quickly, that fourth and last pillar is relationship management. So it's also being a leader. Say if you are in a white organization, you have people of color, you can manage the conversations between each other, having a tuned in listening ear to what is happening within the organization and managing a good conversation, a good dialogue. That also is how you use your emotional intelligence to push a good idea and a civil idea forward.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And we have another question. Are there any organizations or people you recommend we follow on social media to gain additional information or can support via donations?
I'll defer to Elijah on this one, but there's a management consultant guy named Tom Peters that's quite famous that comes at this from a leadership and business point of view, and he's got some really cool, controversial things to say, but quite cool. There's some athletes that are taking the forefront. A guy named Malcolm Jenkins that is a very well thought out African-American NFL football player that's a leader in the NFL that I enjoy his insights because, to Elijah's point, I haven't walked those shoes. So when you put his educated perspective with his history, that I find him to be quite useful. Maybe controversial to you guys, but Don Lemon. I have enjoyed Don Lemon's thinking about this issue. Again, that's a CNN reference. I don't particularly care. Don Lemon is a very insightful and thoughtful person who has helped challenge my thinking. So just my answers. Elijah, I don't know if you have something different.
Yeah, I would say a really great spot. I can list the people, but they're also the people that I kind of maybe resonate with. But there's so many others that may have a different message or similar message that could really resonate more with you. So definitely research it. But some of the people that I specifically follow, and maybe similar to the controversial thought of Don Lemon, is I follow Sean King and obtain a lot of his information and his resources via the Action Pack. And that is a really great resource that helps me get into, okay, who can I email? Who can I call? How can I do the action pieces? That's the big part of this. And also there's a Instagram account. So it's called So You Want to Talk About. And it's really cool because what they do is they talk about racism 101. They talk about white privilege. They talk about all these different things that are affecting us right now. And they dive into the education, the history of it. So it gives you really quick snapshots of, wow, I didn't know about Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Black Wall Street. I didn't know about all these different things this account can try to dive into and to give you some education. So check that out as well.
Thanks, Elijah. All right, we have two questions that somewhat overlap. Michael, what is the first step you believe an organization should take to start training people or educating people at work? Should it be focus groups, work on implicit bias? What are some of your thoughts?
So I would argue that there's maybe one starting point, frankly, and it is education. And the education, an organization has to tailor its training and development to its business first. And that's clear. That's why I think it's education. This bit about bias cannot be overstated. Why? We're talking about bias as it relates to systemic oppression today. Elijah, most of your work in bias with me has been around leadership decision-making, judgments, errors, systems within HR, like performance reviews and hiring practices. So I believe the very starting point is to help people understand the biological root of bias, and from there, get them talking and create what I call psychological safety. Then we do the focus groups. Then we look at our practices and policies. Then we do other things. I firmly believe that bias education is the starting point to get the dialogue going.
Thanks, Michael. We have some resources that people are recommending. We have Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. So just putting it out there. We don't have any more questions. So if you want to close it, I'll close it with a poll, Michael.
I would go back to this slide very quickly and sloppily to invite my white colleague to cease and desist on waiting for minorities to fix this issue. This issue driven by us. We have the power. We are a much more diverse nation than we were in the 1800s, and we've got to leverage that diversity to create change and grab our brothers and sisters. And we've got to create a society that is much different than we have created in the past. Neutrality is no longer an issue. Let's educate, let's debate, let's argue, let's challenge. With that, I would say that's the task of a leader, and we are a leadership development firm. Let us know if we can be helpful. Thank you very much. This will be recorded, and I look forward to sharing more ideas with you in 2 Fridays from now. Thank you, Elijah. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.